Hello everyone, there is a big layout update for you today, and first you will see how I built this engine house. So first, it always starts with plans on paper, drawn to scale. Here you can see the side frame being built. There are two side frames in this footage. And now you can see how I did the roof. It's just some sheets of balsa wood that were glued together, and then it was laid on top of the wood frames, and the frames were assembled together, and you can kind of see how close the two tracks are. So it really was going to be a challenge to build this engine house. Now here you can see I am gluing the side boards that go onto the framework, and in the background my father is building that structure that I did in the last update, and there will be a link in the corner of your screen or in the description below. But as you can see, it's basically all just a bunch of gluing. You just take the super glue and then you put each board piece by piece, and each one had to be cut and measured individually because I'm never one of those people where, you measure twice and cut once. No matter what happens, when I cut, it does not cut the right size. So it's always best in my experience for me to just cut as I go along and then do measurements that way. Due to how close the tracks are in this engine house, it has presented kind of a challenge because the locomotives barely fit through the doorway of the engine house. But nevertheless, you'll see that I did get it to work, but it was very much a challenge that I wasn't sure even until the very end if it would work out very well, especially by installing the doors that go on the engine house itself. Now you can see the process to which I dyed and stained all of the boards on the side of the building. Now, this is a mixture of India ink and water. You can use India ink and alcohol, but I just don't like the fumes that it leaves in the house. But yes, you mix the India ink with that, and it creates this, black mixture, and then when you spread it lightly over boards and things like that, it stains into the board and gives it this old look. What I ended up doing was, after going over this once, I went over a few other boards a second time or even a third time, just intermittently, to make certain boards look darker and certain boards look lighter, as if it's made out of various trees instead of all just one tree. You'll also see that on the side of the building I had added a little maintenance shed with, there'll be machinery in there in the future for maintaining the engines. Now you'll see the process on how I installed the roofing. So that is basically construction paper, black construction paper, where I sprayed a primer over the top of it, unevenly, I might add. And then I took a sanding board and just kind of wore away at the edges of each of the pieces of paper. So you see I took that sanding board and wore away at the edges a little bit, because this is going to be like tar paper that goes on the roof. And so what I do is I just measure out each piece. Each piece is about 4 scale feet by 16 scale feet. That's just how I decided. And then I use that glue there, which is like a glue stick, except it's extra strength. And then I just glued it to the top of the roof there, making sure to overlap in a way that's realistic. And there is the final roof. So you can see how it looks, and it's just so realistic. It's actually surprised a lot of people who have seen it in person. They're just like, whoa, how did you do that? So it really does look like real tar paper. It feels like it too. So there are the front doors to the engine house being built. Same method. And then those are the windows. That's clear polystyrene plastic with polystyrene plastic sheets to create the cross beams that are also painted gray to try to match the wood. And here is the finished product with everything applied. You can see the different boards, the light and dark boards. The doors are installed on the front. The bottoms of the doors have been cut down so that way, theoretically speaking, the doors could fit over the tracks when they're closed. There's the windows. Those were very difficult for me to put in. It's the first time I've ever scratch-built windows. Heck, this is the first scratch-built building I've ever built. So you can see the roof looks really nice. There's the back. The back doors are double doors in case they ever need to bring machinery or equipment through the back side of the building. And then there's the side of the building that faces towards the town. That's how people get in and out when all the other doors are shut. And yeah, there's a little maintenance shed on the side that's accessible within the engine house for maintaining the engines. You know, they have all kinds of machining equipment in there, carpentry equipment, all that kind of stuff. I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. It looks amazing. So there it is, installed in place. Just a little bit of coal on the side there in a pile. Now you'll see how the engines fit going in and out of the building. It is a very, very tight squeeze. I'm not even joking. It is probably only a hair of space between the engine and the doors of the engine house. So it was just amazing that I was able to accomplish that. Now you can see the little Porter engine coming out and going right back in. I made sure that the Forney engine can go in and out through both tracks. It works very well. Now here we are going to start working on the river. This is the next project. So I added a extra switch track to the main line, which was, the switch track was not originally there. I added the switch track and then a spur line because I decided that I wanted to build a bridge where logs could be dumped into the river, because I wanted a logging train and I needed a place to store it. So there is the beginnings of that. The wiring is going in, and then you can see I've curved the remaining track. This is all extra track that I had laying around. And then I am pre-fitting pieces for a hillside where a small workers shanty will go. It'll be kind of like a town worker, maybe a railroad worker. You can see the back wall there, which will later have rock work on it. So it'll look like a rock wall with trees and everything growing on top of it. So you can see the shape of the rock wall. I cut it diagonally, then glued it back in using silicone caulk, and then that kind of gives it some depth, but it does not fully cover the train because I didn't want a tunnel, because I've learned the hard way that I can't get my fat hands through a tunnel to maintain track or anything like that. So I made sure that there was no huge tunnels on this layout that would be difficult. But you can see I have wired in the track and soldered it together. There's some breakages here and there that will be later on fixed. So here is the first beginning process to putting plaster cloth on the river. The plaster cloth will help make the river, well, it'll help the riverbed take to things like paint and other materials later on. But also I needed to create a waterproof barrier between the wood, because later on the river will have a resin that will go in, and the resin will leak out through anything that is not watertight. So the river has to be watertight. But you can see there's all the plaster cloth laid in the river. It's very much like a grid-like pattern, but you'll see how that works out later. So now the river has been coated in a coating of plaster. I took a paintbrush and painted plaster right onto it. So now this thing is 100% watertight. There is going to be no resin leaking through the river itself. Now you can see the bridge. It starts off as a drawing on paper. I even drew up the curvature of the bridge and where the bents will go according to the width of the river. And then I went and started working on the bridge bents themselves, assembling them out of pieces of wood that were again dyed with India ink. And now I am pre-fitting the bridge bents in place, so that way I kind of know what formation they will be and how they will look. And now you can see time-lapse footage of me gluing the bridge bents down using hot glue. The hot glue works really well on plaster, but later on there will be other glues like super glue used to glue together the beams that will support the track above the bridge bents. It was all carefully measured out. You don't want anything to be too high or too low, or else the trains will either uncouple themselves or derail off the track. So it was very, very intense work. Now here you can see my father is working on the footbridge part of the bridge. This is the only bridge on the entire layout that is designed to have a worker's footbridge for them to get across. So he is laying down the boards for that. It is only 2 scale feet wide, the footbridge, and there will be railings installed later on. Now you can see the almost complete bridge. It's got the footpath in place, and then the railing stanchions are in place as well. But nothing is completely glued down yet. The track isn't glued down yet, but you can kind of see how everything's going. And the end of the bridge there is going in. Now this is footage of me filling the bridge abutment. Now the abutment is built with the wood boards on the side that should hold back the earth, but the earth that is behind it. But the earth that is behind it is made of a pile of rocks that have been glued down with Elmer's glue. So you can see there's a liberal amount of Elmer's glue put in. You can see I am installing more rocks and filling that in with more glue. You can't have enough glue on projects like this. Now smaller rocks go on top, and that gets glued down as well. It's all just layered together. It has to be that way because it needs to fit together just right. So you can see more glue goes on. We really want those rocks to be glued down, but the glue will settle in a little bit and you'll see why. So now we put on the rock ballast. That's the ballast for the tracks. That's the finalized ballast color I will use around the entire layout for the tracks. And you can see I pat it down in place and just even it out. Now we're going to do something called spraying wet water. Wet water is just water with a little bit of dish soap in it to loosen the surface tension of the water, and that'll help the glue to soak in better. So now we use a combination of Elmer's glue with water, and using an eyedropper, we drop that in, and as you can see, it's not disturbing the rock ballast at all. Instead, it's seeping right in between all the nooks and crannies of the rock ballast. And that's the point of the wet water. The reduced surface tension allows this glue to soak in more easily. And when it's dry, it is practically like concrete. It works really, really well. And that Elmer's glue is not just regular Elmer's glue, it is extra strength. Now you can see we are ready to install and glue down the track onto the bridge. So we just take the Elmer's glue all and then we just run that down the length of all the support boards and beams of the bridge track. It was a bit clumsy to start off because it was trying to get the glue bottle to fit between the railings, but there we go. And as you can see, I have all the glue going down right across the beams. And then we just let it sit overnight with some weight to hold down the track. We want to make sure it's evenly glued down, so an even distribution of weight on the track will help with that. And this is the final result. That's the bridge, with the footpath and the railings installed. As you can see, that's what it looks like with the log train sitting on top, and it's perfect for 3 log cars to just dump logs into the river, which will float down to the sawmill, which does not exist on this layout. Anyway, I think it looks really great, and I'd like to thank my dad for all the help he's done. As you can see, it looks really amazing, and because the track is isolated from the main power, when I turn the power on to run one train, it doesn't necessarily run the log train, so it works out really well. If you'd like to see more updates on this model railroad, just subscribe to the channel and click the like button if you like this video. Thanks for watching.